He is so often reduced to doubting Thomas, the one who demanded proof. But you know, he's much more interesting than that. Or at least there's traditions that are more interesting. So I was preparing for today, I wanted to dig not just into the biblical story of Thomas, but also to find the stories of him in extra-biblical writings, as they are called. Now, as you heard in the Gospel of John, he was known as the twin, but in one early writing, Thomas is described as the twin of Jesus himself. Say, what now? But not born of Mary. Say, what now? The point being made is Thomas, more than any other of the disciples, was the twin reflection of the nature of Christ. You could see them in each other. And that's in a book called The Acts of Thomas. There's a collection known as the Apocalypse of Thomas, which describes the details of the end of the world as allegedly revealed by Jesus to Thomas. A number of these extra biblical writings emphasize hidden or revealed knowledge, what later became associated with what is called Gnostic traditions. And among those, you may recognize or heard of the Gospel of Thomas, which became popularized by the novel and movie The Da Vinci Code. Now, it's not a collection of stories, but of short sayings of Jesus. Many of them are familiar, like, "The kingdom is inside you and among you." Yes. There's also one called the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, which offers a truly unique take on the childhood of Jesus. Some miraculous, some unsettling. As Richard Loesch describes Jesus in them, he is an arrogant little miracle worker with no sense of responsibility or compassion. You see, in one story, Jesus kills another boy who beat him in a race, and then he brings him back to life. And some of the stories are charming, like when Jesus formed birds out of clay and brings life to them and they fly away. And yet these are stories about Jesus, not Thomas. So according to the Acts of Thomas, he traveled with merchants to India to share the good news and form communities. In fact, that's where Thomas is buried, in Chennai. Tradition gives the year as 52. There's actually a group of Christians in India known as St. Thomas Christians, who remember him not as the one who doubted, but the one who went the farthest, who crossed more cultures and languages and worlds than anyone else to share the good news of Jesus Christ. And it's a point of pride for them that Christianity came to India much earlier than most of Europe. So among those, my favorite story, Thomas finds himself in front of a king named Gundaforus. The king asks what he does for a living, and Thomas says, "I'm a builder. I build things, even palaces for kings." "Good, build me one." "Sure." Thomas agrees, but says, "Not right away. I'll build it in the winter," which to the king makes no sense. Everyone builds in the summer. But he agrees, and he gives Thomas a bunch of money to start, and then sends him more every month, a lot of it. Thomas takes the money, but instead of building anything, he gives it away to anyone he saw with a need, to the poor, to people who are sick. He just keeps giving it all away. And one day the king sends word to ask, "Well, how's the palace coming along?" And Thomas replies, "Spectacular. It's almost done. Just the roof is left." And so the king sends the final chests full of gold and silver to finish it, which Thomas promptly gives away. Now, someone reported this to the king, that nothing had actually been built. Nothing. Not one wall, not a foundation. Gundaforus brings Thomas in, and he asks him directly, "Have you built my palace?" And Thomas said happily, "Oh yes, absolutely." "Well, then show it to me." "Well, you can't see it here." doesn't sit well with the king. So Thomas is thrown in prison, and the king prepares to have him executed. But just then, the king's brother dies, briefly. He tells the king that during the time he was dead, I was taken up and shown a palace, a beautiful one. And I asked if I could live there, and was told, no, that one belongs to your brother. It was built by Thomas. And the king was so grateful that his brother's life was spared, he spared Thomas, but asks again, where is this palace you have built for me? And Thomas said, I built it, but you're looking for it in the wrong place. Now, for many people, the meaning of the story is that he built the palace in heaven, and that someday, only after death, the king would see it. Maybe. The palace was built, just not with stone or walls. You're looking in the wrong place. Because you can see it in the people who were fed. You can see it in the people who were healed. You can see it in the lives of the people the king doesn't pay attention to, which is why he doesn't see it. But isn't it ironic that today's gospel, Thomas is the one who demands proof. He's the one famous for doubting until he saw with his own eyes. So let's go back to that story. So you notice that Jesus doesn't argue with Thomas about this. He doesn't shame him. He just says, well, here, take a look. And with that detail taken care of, they can get back to the conversation the disciples were having before Thomas entered the room. What are they going to do now? And that's when Jesus said, if you forgive someone's sins, they're gone for good. If you don't, what are you going to do with them? Isn't that a great line? What are you going to do with them? So the disciples were being sent out, but to do what? To build beautiful churches or grand cathedrals? No, it's to build palaces, the ones you can't see, other than you can see it in the lives of the people being set free. You know, free from what we carry and free from what's been held against us. People like you and me freed from what we can't let go of, either against someone or against ourselves. And knowing that forgiveness is really, really difficult, Jesus breathes on them and says, receive the Holy Spirit. There's a song we're going to hear later by Matthew West that tells the story of Renee Napier. She's a woman who lost her daughter Megan to a drunk driver. Her daughter was barely out of high school, ready to start her life, and then she was gone in an instant because Eric Smallridge chose to get behind the wheel after drinking. He was arrested, tried, and sent to prison. And for a long time, Renee carried what anyone would carry in that situation: deep grief, great anger, and the kind of questions that don't have satisfactory answers. And then, at some point, she made a decision that perhaps most would not even consider. She agreed to enter into a victim-offender mediation program. So she went to the prison, she sat down across from him, and began having conversations with the man who had taken her daughter's life. And over time, in the course of those conversations, she chose to forgive him. And not in the abstract, to his face. But this became public knowledge because she then supported a reduction in his sentence. Many struggled to understand this. Some people admired her for it, but many were critical of her. You know, forgiveness is not simple or clean, especially something like that. But then she took it even further. She didn't just move on. Renee began speaking publicly about drunk driving and about accountability and about what it means to forgive, without pretending that what happened didn't matter. And she has been since working for years on a different kind of justice. One that tells the honest truth about harm and yet still makes room for something new to happen. It's what we call restorative justice. So the king said, "Show me what you built." And when you look at Renee's life, you see it. When you look at Eric's life, you see it. In forgiveness and any life set free or changed in ways you can't point to in the usual way, but no less real. Like the palace Thomas built, you can't see it. And yet you can't help but see it. Everywhere that lives are changed by the love of Jesus for humankind, through compassion and mercy. The disciples were not sent out to build cathedrals. That's true for us too, for the church. Not to have some impressive, imposing structure, but to have a base from which to serve our neighbors with love. For example, providing a place where seniors can come not just for a free meal every Wednesday, but a smile and a hug and an activity that draws forth life-giving creativity through art. Like this one from last Wednesday, or watercolors, or amazing pieces of art that many say, "I'm not an artist," and go home with these beautiful memories. Or a place like 100 kids can run through, stampede through, with excitement, discovering treasures that we've hidden for them to find. And ultimately, yeah, it's candy, but what we hope they discover is love. A place where people in recovery can come and show up every week and find support. There's 5 different groups here every week for AA, Al-Anon, Debtors Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, and a very large 12-step study group. Each person is a palace being built. So when we talk about what we can give to the community, it isn't just a beautiful building on the corner for everyone to admire. You know what it really is? It's plumbing that works. It's heating and air conditioning that works. It's roofs that don't leak. It's sidewalks where people don't trip on their way in. It's termites that have been, I don't suppose we're supposed to celebrate extermination. So I thought, well, let's just think of it as renting a big tent for a $30,000 funeral. And so many other things. And no one will ever see it unless it breaks, and it will be visible. So this is Capital Campaign Commitment Sunday. And when someone asks you, how did you spend that $1 million you raised? It's an easy answer. It's in lives changed. It's happening in this place every single day, all week long. And it happens in worship with big, huge trees and a massive ship. Thank you, Larry Spears, for building those. It's where creativity is expressed and music like Ain't No Grave. Oh my God, how gorgeous is that? It is leaving here from all those experiences filled and ready to make a difference at home. Remember this line when you take it home. If you forgive someone's sins, they're gone for good. And if you don't, what are you going to do with them at home or in our families or in our neighborhood or in our country? You are the palace right here. Can't you see it happening right now?